Hello everyone and welcome to this another lecture on Introduction to Literary Theory. And we in the previous video we have seen how representations differ with regard to media, objects and manners. That was one of the biggest concepts that was given by Aristotle, and in this lecture we would look at some of his other concepts. And one singular contribution, if we have to remember about Aristotle, I think that would be his contribution towards the construction of the plot of tragedy, and that is something that we will be looking at in today's class. And therefore it would also be very significant for us to understand his ideas of the construction of a tragedy and the other elements that go on to make a tragedy. So the beginners of tragedy the origins of tragedy or the beginnings of tragedy could also be associated with Aeschylus and Sophocles, who concept or wrote some of the tragedies. And since we are dealing with Aristotle, we would be looking at the definition of tragedy that Aristotle gives us. And as we see along, we would dissect this definition and look at the prominent phrases or the words which would give us a clear understanding of what exactly tragedy meant to Aristotle. The definition of tragedy is a representation of a serious, complete action which has magnitude in embellished speech, with each of its elements separately in the parts of the play, represented by people acting and not by narration, accomplishing by pity and terror the catharsis of such emotions. So since the definition is on your screen, you may read it again, you may listen to it again, but it's very important that we understand this particular definition of Aristotle, because he influenced a number of playwrights who followed this kind of writing plays, because there are very significant things that we would be looking at. Now, what are some of the things that are important for us while we look at the definition of tragedy according to Aristotle? Now, the first phrase that we would be looking at is, he says it's the whole action and with magnitude. Now, what does he mean by saying it's a whole action? Anyways, we'll look at the word magnitude a little later. Now, if I would have to again dissect the word whole to you all, I would define it as something that has beginning, middle and the end. So therefore, if an action is to be complete, it should have a beginning, it should have a middle, and it should also have a conclusion or the end. Now, very interestingly, he also goes on to define what is beginning or how is beginning, what is middle, and also what is conclusion. So he defines beginning as something that does not of necessity follow from something else, but after which naturally is or comes into being. So for beginning, it is not necessary that there should be something before it, but it's very important that there is something after it. So beginning is something which it does not necessarily have something before it, but out of necessity there should be something after it. So that is beginning. The middle, he would define and say, follows of necessity and naturally has something after it. So middle should necessarily follow from something else, and again necessarily should also have something after it. So that forms the middle. And finally, conclusion is exactly the opposite of beginning. So it should necessarily have something before it, or it should necessarily follow from something it, but again necessarily it should not have anything after it. So if you say this particular thing is a conclusion, and if it has something to follow after conclusion, then that conclusion ceases to be conclusion anymore, and therefore you need to have another conclusion. Now, this is very important for us to know what is this whole action, because we will have to it will come to our aid again while we understand some other concepts of Aristotle. Now, that is the whole action which has beginning, which has middle, and which also has conclusion. Now the other word that I was talking of was the magnitude. Magnitude is not too tiny nor too big. So your play, when you are writing your play, especially he is talking of the tragedy here, it should not be very big, neither it should be too small. It should stand somewhere in the middle. So you can't have a play of about 700 pages, neither can you have a play of about 10 pages. So that is the meaning of magnitude, the balance. The second aspect that you would be looking at in the definition of tragedy according to Aristotle is, the phrase is, elements separately in the parts of the play. So what are the elements which are separately seen in the play? So there are about 6 elements that we will be looking at, and the first among them is plot, which is very, very significant. Let me just give you an example. If you analyze a film, every film with a good story would automatically become popular, whereas every film with a superstar need not become popular. So that tells you the significance of a story or a plot. So therefore, for Aristotle, plot is nothing but the soul of a tragedy. That is something that keeps the tragedy moving. So therefore, it's very important, and therefore he pays a lot of attention to the construction of a plot. The second point that we'll be looking at, representation of action and not characters. So that's the example that I give just now. Who performs the action is not important, but what action is he going to perform, that's very important. So therefore plot is important and not character. If the plot is good, whoever performs the action, it can still be good. So therefore it's a representation of action and not of characters. Now plot can be simple or it can be complex. Now how do we define a simple plot and how do we define a complex plot? So simple plot is where you have the change of fortune happening without reversal or recognition. So therefore you have a rich man becoming poor, but he does not recognize, neither does he understand that it's happening. So that is a simple plot. You have a person living, he is a poor man and then gradually becomes rich, but there's no recognition happening. So that's a simple plot, or a linear plot. That also could be another word. A complex plot is a one where you have change of fortune with the and recognition, both are one. So therefore complex plot is a one where you have the fortune changes and it gets reversed, it is also recognized, or sometimes you may have only the fortune changing and it could be either recognized or reversed, and people also able to understand it. Now all these concepts, reversal and recognition, all this would be explained to you in the next slide. Now what is this recognition? It is the Aristotle uses the word anagnorisis to refer to recognition. Now what is recognition? Here I would also like to give you the example of the play Oedipus Rex, where he says recognition. Now when Oedipus, when is this aspect of recognition relevant to the play Oedipus Rex? It is the moment he recognizes that he slept with his mother and has killed his father. That's the moment of recognition. So what happens after anagnorisis is change from ignorance to knowledge. So suddenly you move from ignorance to knowledge, a new knowledge. You begin to understand that something that you was hidden to you or kept hidden to you from you for a very long time. So it may be with regard to somebody's nature, person's nature, or maybe person's identity, and in the context of Oedipus Rex I told you it is person's identity and etc. There could be many other things. This anagnorisis or recognition could bring about hate or love between people. And for Oedipus, it's guilt that comes to him. He begins to feel regretful, and finally takes out his own eyes because he says he has seen his mother naked. So therefore it can also bring love when you recognize or have this anagnorisis. That's the first one. The second one is a reversal, or it is also called peripeteia, okay, or good to bad, or vice versa, or bad to good. So recognition can be reversal can be from good to bad or from bad to good. So in the context of Oedipus Rex, it was from good to bad because he was a good king, but accidentally happens to kill his father, and accidentally happens to again marry his mother and also beget children. So because of which his kingdom begins to experience famine and many other problems. So that reversal has happened from good to bad, and from bad to worse actually. And there it could also be otherwise, where you have you are very poor and you slowly gradually begin to become rich and have a comfortable life, and that way also life can move on. So these are two important concepts, recognition and reversal, which form very important part of the of building a plot, very important part. I also given you an example. Anagnorisis and peripeteia together bring about pity and fear. So now what happens is, another example that I could give is, if you could look at the tragedies of William Shakespeare, you would always have high standing people, people belonging to upper class, aristocratic class. For example, Desdemona's husband, Othello, is a army general, and when he commits the crime of killing Desdemona, we do not feel angry with Othello, but rather we feel pity for him, and we are scared that this is something that could happen to anyone. Now that also happens because of the tragic flaw that is there in the character, and Aristotle calls this tragic flaw hamartia. It's a tragic flaw that is there in every tragic hero. Now this tragic flaw leads him to commit a crime which does not anger the audience, but rather brings about pity. So if you could analyze the play Macbeth again by William Shakespeare, for Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, we don't feel angry about it, but we feel pity for them. We feel sad for them that such a thing has happened to them. So therefore anagnorisis and peripeteia together bring about pity and fear in the minds of the audience, and this will automatically, or this should automatically lead to catharsis. Now catharsis is a medical term, and Aristotle himself does not go on to explain what he exactly means by catharsis, but it could be loosely seen as purgation of emotions, or when something bad happens to good people, we suddenly feel pity for them, we feel sad for them, and that is the ultimate aim of tragedy. It's something like this simple. When a very rich man becomes poor, we feel sad for him, but when a poor man remains poor, we don't feel sad for him. So that's exactly how a tragedy works. When a person belonging to a high class in the society commits a crime which is as silly as murdering his wife, we feel pity for him, we feel sad for him. So and that would definitely bring in pity and fear, and lead to catharsis, and that's the ultimate aim of tragedy, or that should be the ultimate. So when the audience go and sit in front of a stage to watch a tragedy, at the end of it they are relieved, they're relieved of all their emotions, because they have seen bad things happening to good people as well. So therefore there is a release of all different sorts of emotions, and that's the ultimate aim of tragedy. Now while we are constructing a plot, these are very significant things that he talks of. There are quite a lot of playwrights who did follow this very strictly, and then there are equal number of scholars who did not follow any of these, and the kind of plays that are produced today are totally different. So he talks of three unities: unity of time, unity of space, and unity of action. Now what is this unity of time? He says you should have internal short internal chronology, and that is every action should get over in 24 hours to make it look realistic. So therefore if a play begins, it should get over within 24 hours. You cannot extend it for the next day. So that is unity of time. And there should be also a sequence, internal chronology. So you should have the beginning, you should have then the middle, and then also you should have the conclusion, and all should follow logically. You cannot have things shuffled down. So therefore there should be an internal chronology. Now this particular unity of time today has transformed itself into something called a stream of consciousness, where things happen in the past in terms of memories, and in future or in terms of memories or flashbacks, and in future as part of imagination, and where you have even a great novel like Ulysses, where the action gets over in 24 hours. Or you also have another novel written by an Indian, Mulk Raj Anand, Untouchables, which also gets over in 24 hours. The action should get over in 24 hours. It should not exceed. Unlike in movies, no action gets over in 24 hours. It's always it's always runs into days, few years sometimes, or 5 years, 10 years, and that's how it comes on the screen. That's unity of time. You cannot exceed more than 24 hours. Second, unity of space, minimal locations, preferably restricted to the stage or only the stage. So therefore you cannot have one scene happening in Mangalore, and second scene happening in Bombay, and third scene happening in Dubai. And Aristotle would say that's not the right way of presenting tragedy. So therefore as few locations as possible and as far as possible, if it is restricted to the stage, that is the best thing that can happen. And the last one is unity of action. So there has to be a linear plot, not too many subplots. Now this is an interesting take, because if I always give this example, if you show the older generation of people the movies that are produced today, many of them would not be able to understand, because the plots today are not linear, rather they are all shuffled, because you can also have simultaneous narrations happening of 2 to 3 stories. If you look at the movie Lucia, that's a Kannada movie that had come a few years ago, you have multiple narrators narrating the same story at the same time. So therefore it's not enough that you just simply sit and watch, but it's very important that you also use your brains. It gives a little food to your brain as well. So therefore but Aristotle would say that is not the idea. The idea is to keep the plot simple, linear. So you have a baby taking birth, and then you have the baby becoming small, then in its usual time going to school, and then graduating from first to second, second to third, third to fourth, and likewise till the 10th, and then going to the PUC. Whereas today's plots are not like that. Today's plots, you have the baby being born, and then straight away going to school, and straight away finishing the school, and then straight away getting into the job. And that's where you see the jumps happening in the plot. Whereas Aristotle would say there has to be linearity when it comes to plot, and then there should not be too many subplots, because that will make the plot very complicated. People may not understand the plot, so therefore you got to keep it simple. So this is only the first point that we have discussed when it comes to the tragedy. So that is elements is what we are discussing. So rather 2 points that we have discussed. One is the whole action, and what does whole mean, which should have the beginning, the middle, and the end or the conclusion. And this, in the second part we have seen the elements of tragedy, and in the elements we have seen the first one, that is the plot and how it is to be constructed. So the other 5 elements of tragedy we would be looking at in the next video. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all in the next class.